Thank you for joining us today. My name is Jocelyn Philbrook, and I'm super excited to be leading today's discussion with the VCDX Certified team from Rolta AdvizeX. Joining me are Chris Miller, Nimtala Daher, and Joe Clark. The VMware Certified Design Expert certification, the VCDX, represents the highest tier of VMware certification. There are only 265 VCDX worldwide, and we're fortunate enough to have 3 of them on staff at Rolta AdvizeX, and they are here with us today. Additionally, we are lucky enough to have the 3 VCDX candidates with us, Mike Ross, Joseph Mixon, and Shinya Sakuta. It isn't often that we have this level of VMware expertise assembled in one session. These guys are extremely busy, but today they've carved out a bit of time to tell us more about their backgrounds and what it means to be VCDX certified. Let's kick things off with a quick introduction from each of our VCDX experts and candidates. Chris, I'd like to get started with you. Could you tell us a little bit about your VCDX certification journey and how long you've been working with VMware technology?
Sure. So I'm Chris Miller, and I've been working with VMware since the early 2000s, since GSX Server sort of came around, and kind of moved into a focus role on that toward the late 2000s in consulting, and I've kind of grown with them ever since I saw my very first vMotion happen. So when NSX became a thing a few years ago, I had an opportunity as a VMware partner to go through some early training and to attempt the VCDX for networking and security, which actually lent itself pretty well to my IT background. So about 2.5 years ago, 3 years ago, went through the first batch of those with Nimtala as well, and became NSX certified for VCDX.
Terrific, and that actually is the perfect segue into Nimtala. Would you tell us a little bit about your background? You're actually a VCDX mentor, so if you could tell us a little bit about your path to certification and mentorship.
Sure. Yes, my name is Nimtala Daher. I'm a principal consultant at AdvizeX. I started out my career in 1985 as an IBM mainframe programmer. From there, moved on to Cleveland State University, where I spent 25 years as a network. I created the network there and then administered the network at Cleveland State, and then decided to move on to AdvizeX to kind of get a new challenge in my career and in life. I started working with VMware about 2009, and then when I got to AdvizeX, I was fortunate enough to be able to be invited to the VCDX program along with Chris, where Chris was a great help and valuable help getting me through the program. And we were able to accomplish that great feat together. As far as mentorship, as I stated earlier, I spent 25 years at a university where I helped, where I had a lot of student employees and had a lot of dealings with students in the university, as well as taught a few part-time classes. So teaching and helping people achieve their goals is something that I really am passionate about, and it's just it was a natural thing for me to do, and so this is something I really enjoy doing more. It's really something that brings great joy to me to be able to help others achieve their goals.
Terrific. We're lucky to have you on staff. Joe, I saved you for last because you are a double VCDX, and I know that you actively blog and help others on their VCDX certification process. Could you tell us about your VMware experience and a little on how your certifications are different from the ones that Chris and Nimtala hold?
Yeah, sure thing, Jocelyn. Mine are a little bit different because a lot of my background comes from the desktop management world. So I started out my career as a desktop engineer, managing large fleets of desktops for a bank. Did the same thing and added server and virtualization to the mix for a hospital, and then came on to AdvizeX as a consultant, and I've eventually worked my way up to be an architect here. And along the way, my history as a desktop engineer sort of helped pave the road for my first VCDX, which is in desktop and mobility. So with desktop and mobility, it's basically virtual desktops and digital workspace, and pretty much everything that involves end user computing is what that VCDX is in. And what's interesting about that is that more often than not, most people just start with the data center one. So we kind of have some rare breeds here at AdvizeX that kind of like go straight for the hard stuff. Because traditionally in the VCDX program, there was only one VCDX, and it was in virtualization because VMware was a smaller company, and they only had one track, and it was the VCDX track. And with the sort of branching out, kind of how other programs have done so that more specificity can be applied, I went into desktop and mobility because I thought it was a better fit and it was more relevant to my work at the time. And then I sort of backed into the data center VCDX. And that's just a little bit about my trip and sort of what makes it a little bit different. And then also I can brag a little bit because my number is a little lower than Chris and Nimtala's number, so that just means I got it before them. And I was something that's a little bit interesting about it. Is I was actually the first person to successfully defend the DTM branch of the certification to a panel. There was two guys that got it ahead of me, but only because they did not have to defend it to a panel. So I was one of the first that actually successfully defended it in the history of the program. So.
Wow. That's great, and also intensive. Nimtala, I'm going to tap on your VCDX mentorship role just a little bit. What does it take to earn the VCDX? And if you could touch on how Rolta AdvizeX customers benefit from working with a partner that has 3 VCDX certified professionals on staff?
Sure. Well, the VCDX certification is it kind of encompasses a lot of knowledge around VMware, vSphere. The VCDX certification we have, Chris and I, the network virtualization, takes into account as well networking. So not only do you need to be well versed in vSphere and VMware in general, you also need to understand networking concepts and be well versed in the networking area. It was a very intense program. Ours was the kind of a pilot for the network virtualization. So we went through a more structured and regimented program, Chris and I. But we were assisted throughout the process and kind of mentored ourselves through it, which helped immensely. I think if I had to do it on my own, it would have been a much more difficult and harder to attain the certification. But since VMware mentored us, as well as I personally drew great assistantship from Chris himself, it made the journey a little bit easier for us. As far as the mentorship today, as I said, just as VMware and Chris mentored me through this process, which I found invaluable, and I don't think I would have been able to accomplish this certification without VMware's help as well as Chris's help. I feel the same responsibility and duty to help others through this process. And as I stated earlier, this is something that I enjoy doing, and it's not at all a burden. It brings me great joy to be able to help others, just as Chris and VMware and others have helped me. As far as what this means to AdvizeX and to our customers, Not only on the staff, we have Joe and Chris, who are great resources for myself, as well as for Mike and Joe and Shinta. We have really the whole company as a great resource for all of our customers. So anytime I run into any issues or I have questions that I don't have the answer to, I know that I have a whole company that is behind me to help me through any project that I'm working on.
That's such a huge benefit for companies and organizations that are working with Rolta AdvizeX too. Chris, just expanding a little bit on what Nantella mentioned, there are only 265 VCDX certified individuals worldwide. Do you think this certification is becoming more important? And if so, why?
Yeah, I do think so. I mean, it's been growing. I think when Nantala and I did it, they were near 150. So just in the last couple of years, and the certification's been around for, I'm not exactly sure how long, but I think at least 8 to 9 years before that. Just in the last 2 years alone, it's grown by another 100 folks. So I think it is important. I think it's also low in terms of the number of people who have achieved it, because it does require a pretty significant commitment, time, and energy to basically pass the required design requirements, and then to be able to successfully defend it in front of a VMware panel. So I think it is more important looking forward, just because of the nature of where the industry is shifting to more software-defined type of approach, and VMware sort of at the forefront of that with NSX and other products as well. So I do believe you'll see more people take advantage of the VMware certification. And then finally, I think as folks get through the program, and word of mouth and spreads, and people understand the value of VCDX, I think you'll see more people step up to the challenge. It's been a little bit, I'll say, mysterious for several years. Most people didn't really understand what it was, but I think as the industry starts to recognize the certification, those numbers will continue to grow exponentially.
Great. Joe, as I mentioned at the beginning, VCDX is the highest VMware certification offered. You have 2. What are your other VMware certification goals, and how do you think those will benefit our Rolta AdvizeX customers?
Well, you sort of hit this plateau when you get the VCDX. It's kind of a weird experience. It's kind of like there's great excitement, and then there's this disbelief phase, and then it's kind of like, wow, what now? What do I even do now? Like it's such an amazing feeling, but there's this almost plateau and deceleration sort of coming out of that. And it actually took me a lot of thought and time and effort to go back and get the second one, just because it was so much time and effort and concern and travel for the first one. And so I don't know if a third one is in the books for me, but if it is, it will most certainly be on NSX, simply just because some of the things that are going on with NSX and sort of being that fabric that connects on-prem and public clouds, that's just something that's really, really interesting to me, and exactly how I think that we can continue to remain relevant for our customers. So as far as my certification goals goes, I don't know that I will continue on the VCDX path. I might broaden myself a little bit more, but if I do, I will very likely be honing in on my software-defined networking skills, simply because I believe that that is right at the forefront of where a lot of customers are looking, with what Chris was saying, with more people moving to software-defined technology. It's becoming less and less about a hypervisor, which is sort of VMware's bread and butter background, and more about, how can you enable the business? How can you actually provide a greater return on assets that are owned? And how can you solve problems in a creative fashion and get people to market faster? Those are the problems that we're really more concerned about now, instead of just combating virtualization and storage. So it's really cool to sort of see the evolution move past that, because it means that we can make a bigger difference with less hands-on and keyboard time.
Well, there are 3 others that are coming along that are going to help with that as well. So I'd like to now turn to our VCDX candidates, Mike, Joseph, and Shania. Could you tell us just a little bit about how long you've been working with VMware and when you decided to embark on your VCDX certification journey? Mike, let's get started with you.
Okay, yeah. So I've been working with VMware probably since about 2007. But to frame that, I got started probably a bit later in life with entering into the IT profession. So it was until probably about my 30s that I started professionally working in IT. And so diving into certifications in general, I always felt that they were a really good way to sort of jumpstart or kickstart knowledge in a particular subject. Because when I first started, I was working with virtualization, but I was also working with just about everything else. So I saw them really as a way to sort of put a date on something and say, okay, I need to know X about this particular topic, and I need to prove it in the certification exam, by this date. So I've always been, sort of my education has always been sort of tied to the certifications, and I really think they do help when you're learning something new and give that motivation. And so, obviously VCDX is a little bit of a different animal. When I came to work at AdvizeX, I got, involved in some of the larger design engagements that we worked on with customers, and just being involved in that process and seeing all of the different things that go into that, all of the, different documentation, all of the actual like gathering requirements, that whole process, really kind of bit me, in a good way. And so that's what sort of sparked my desire to, go down the VCDX path.
And Mike, where are you in the process now? I think you're the furthest along. So if you could just tell us a little bit about where you are.
Yeah, so I'm currently working on my design document, the submission for the VCDX. There's 2 parts to it. There's the submitting of the design, and then either gets accepted or rejected. And then there's, once the design is accepted successfully, then there's the actual defense. So I'm in the point where I'm getting ready to submit the actual documentation part of it, the submission form. And so, hopefully that gets accepted and move on to the defense piece.
Great. Well, we'll look forward to talking to you more about that. Shania, can you give us a brief introduction and tell us a little bit about where you are in the VCDX certification process?
Sure. This is Shinya Sakuda. I started working with the VMware products back in 2004 with the GSX server, and been working with it ever since. The reason why I decided to do the VCDX program was mainly because I was invited to the Ninja NSX program, which there are a few of us that got invited to put us on this VCDX path. And because I was invited, I'm going through this process of getting the certification.
Terrific. And where are you in it?
So there's some prerequisites for this the design submission. So I'm actually working on the prerequisition part. There are a few tests that you need to pass before that point. I have one more test to pass. So once I pass that, then I'll be working fully on the design.
Terrific. So Joseph, rounding out the introductions here, when did you decide to start down the VCDX certification path?
So I've been working with VMware products since about 2010, but VCDX, it really didn't pop on my radar until I started with AdvizeX about 2.5 years ago. And even then, it was, my understanding of it at that time was really that it was just a really focused certification on a specific, VMware technology stack. And at that time, it was all cool and good, but it really wasn't, I don't know, that in and of itself didn't motivate me to pursue it diligently anyway. But I would say about a year ago, I really started to understand through talking with really these guys that are on this call that VCDX it's a lot more than just a focused certification on a specific VMware technology. It's really more about design and just how to architect things and how to design things around business requirements. And those are skills that you can take I mean, you could take anywhere, take to any technology. So with my new understanding of what that was, that really added a lot more value to the certification, and it caused me to be motivated enough to set aside the time to work towards it. So I would say within the last 6 months, I've been head down trying to plow forward as quickly as I can towards the certification.
Great. So I'm going to just open it up to the group a little bit, and let's just talk about why VMware certifications are important, specifically the VCDX, but what value do we think that it brings to organizations that Rolta AdvizeX works with?
Sure, I have an example that's fairly applicable from recent work. So one of the things that you learn as part of the VCDX program, it's not just the technology configurations and so forth, right? I mean, that's obviously part of it. You have to understand the underlying technology, but it's how to approach design from a perspective of business, as Joseph mentioned, right? And part of that is making sure that when you design a technology solution, that you're meeting business requirements, but not only that you're not exceeding them for the sake of technology. So as engineers, a lot of us have a tendency to want to do things that we consider cool, but not necessarily things that are cool because they solve a problem, but just because we like them from a technology perspective. And so kind of looking through the VCDX methodology and understanding that, meeting business requirements is what's critical. Doing things that's cool introduces risks in a lot of cases. That's really helped us design any new technology, whether it's VMware or not. So the one way it's helping the organization is shifting the mindset of a lot of our consulting organizations across the board. And when we run into we'll say something's never been done, where there's not a blueprint out there that you can read and consume and say, here's how you do this, it's super beneficial for us. So we've got a couple of retail organizations we're working with now, for example, to help modernize the delivery of their e-commerce platform. And it's a very, I'll say, cutting edge, bleeding edge type of architecture that they have as far as requirements are concerned, specific to containers and running containers on top of VMware products. So there's a mix and mesh of various OEM products and architectures that we have to sort of put together to achieve their requirements. And what's given us an advantage is that we're able to speak across all of the technology domains and build a single architecture. And, competitively speaking, the customer talked to the OEMs who were involved in the project, and none of them had, and that includes VMware, none of them had the expertise along with the methodology that they could combine together to provide the customer the architecture that they need. So for us now, we're confident that even though there's not a blueprint for us to work from, we have the skills and the approach that's necessary to put things together and ensure success for the outcome of the customer's project.
Great. It's a great example. So team, what advice do you have for others considering certifications?
This is Joe. I can jump in on that one, Jocelyn. So,
yeah, go ahead,
I mean, I would say I'll go first and then I'll hand it over to Namtala. But I would say it's more about the journey than it is about the result of a test, which I think is really, really important. I went through with a study group of folks, at least the VCDX path, and the experience that I had along the way was the most in-depth and eye-opening education I've ever experienced. And I've sat through a number of 5-day training courses, none of which prepared me in the way that preparing for a certification of this magnitude will prepare you for. The idea is that you have to know how to look under every single rock and corner of the solution and be able to answer to that, whether it's inside or outside of your wheelhouse of experience. And, the panelists understand that not everybody knows everything about everything, but they expect you to know a whole heck of a lot if they're going to coin you as an expert. So there's some stress in that. And along with that stress, just, it sort of circles back to what I was starting to say, which is it's about that journey. It's about the pursuit of bettering yourself and, your education and making you a better consultant and architect as a part of that process. And like Chris was saying, the design methodology is something that we can take and apply to any technology. So the concept of requirements, risks, constraints, assumptions, and saying those are the things that we sort of end up mapping out and that the business ends up caring about. And from a technology perspective, they might not care about how everything is cabled or, what switches are used or what pieces of the hardware components are, but they sure care about the outcomes. So if they have a slow application that's hurting the business, they care about that most certainly. So it's a way to combine the two and speak the language of both the technologists and the business folk. So it was really eye-opening to me, because for a long time as a technologist, all I could see was the tech. All I could see was, this is the best way to do it because this is the best practice because this is how I know it. And it sort of just shot all of that and said, no, not really. There is no one best way to do it, because every company and every company's business model is different. So that's just one thing to sort of keep in mind as folks are going through that journey. Go ahead, Namtala.
Yes, and I agree obviously with what Joe and Chris stated. But to add to that and to kind of on another level, on another layer, becoming a VCDX is a very kind of eye-opening experience. You have to have great knowledge, and it's not about just memorizing knowledge. You have to have the knowledge and understand it, not just memorize numbers and facts, but you have to understand what it is that you're learning. You have to deeply comprehend the concepts and everything that you're designing and that you're defending. And then after you have achieved this journey, which is very satisfying, there's this responsibility that you feel to kind of maintain and honor this accomplishment that you have done by maintaining this high level of understanding and commitment to this program. So it's not just that I have accomplished this, now I can relax and let what I have accomplished the rest. You feel a sense of responsibility to always keep up the knowledge, keep up to date everything that is coming out, keep abreast of any new technologies and everything else that which you could use to enhance and kind of update yourself, and in the same time assist your company as well as the customers that you're working for.
That's good advice. So now for our VCDX certified professionals, so that's Chris, Namtala, and Joe. What advice do you have for Mike, Shinya, and Joseph as they're embarking down this journey?
Warn your family that you're going to be busy for a while. I mean, I can't remember who said it earlier, but I mean, the comment that it's more about the journey than the certification is true. So the more you invest in going above and beyond the requirements and putting your best into it, the more you're going to get out of it. Because everybody's going to stand up and defend the design as part of the process. And, from a logistics perspective, they're looking that you hit some sort of minimum. But, explore everything, right? Understand every detail of what you're working on. Don't just try to seek the paper, but seek the knowledge. And I think you'll be happier because of it. And you'll be able to use it daily, and to help improve things for our customers and be relevant for our customers. But definitely be prepared to spend a good portion of time dedicated to focusing on the design and being able to rationalize and defend that. And, just keep your head up. It's a lot of work, but it's also very rewarding.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I would say too, along with that, I always worked backwards from a defense date. And scheduled my work on the VCDX around a defense date. So it was like you looked at the calendar for the year, you said, here's the application date cutoff. I need to have it at least ready to go by then. And no one ever feels ready to click the submit button. Every single time I've clicked the submit button, which was 3, I did fail once. You know, every single time I've clicked the submit button, I didn't feel ready. I felt, oh man, I rushed this. I didn't get through this. I didn't document everything I wanted to. I don't feel ready. And each time you feel that way. So, but I would say definitely pick a defense date, because if the VCDX is just something that's on the radar, it's different from being an active candidate when you have a defense date sort of, scheduled and ready to go. So it makes you work towards it. It's kind of like if you're, a musician, you don't really practice unless you have a concert, right? So it's kind of that idea of, no matter what happens, I'm gonna submit. And if it gets shot down, I'll aim for the next cycle. But it's the intentionality behind saying I've got a date that I need to hit and working towards it. And then to echo what Chris said too, yeah, it's a big family conversation, simply because of the amount of time that it takes apart from your duties that go along with work. Sometimes you get really lucky and you get a project that you can actually use as the model for your defense, and that really, really goes a long way in helping, because it's kind of a lot of the effort that you would have spent in either generating a design for a fictitious company or for a design that maybe doesn't come to fruition. You're actually spending it working on, you're more familiar with the environment. So there's a lot of familiarity bonus sort of that comes along with that. So sometimes that happens, but if it doesn't, it's a big time commitment, and it can be a financial commitment as well. Simply because, most of us that are on this call have a home lab of some sort. And a lot of times to either come close to reproducing or creating the customer environment in a home lab, the simple fact is it requires hardware dollars. And that's something that that most of us have made investments into. But anytime you start talking about time and money, that's not a decision you make in a vacuum. You definitely want your family involved with that. So that's my advice there for us guys.
Yes, and if I can add onto that, as Chris and Joe very well stated, this is a commitment. This is not for the faint of heart. For myself, I was lucky. Instead of having to make that choice of commitment, I was able to send my wife and kids on a long vacation, where I did not have to try to juggle my time between work, family, and working on my VCDX. So I spent my time at least just on working and my VCDX without having to share that with the family commitments as well. So not everyone is able to send their wife and kids on a long vacation, but as I was, but having the buy-in from the family is a requirement, I would say, because this is hard enough on its own, and then having to deal with family issues with a family that doesn't understand the amount of effort and time commitment that this requires, makes it almost impossible. So that would be my advice. And then be confident and know what you're doing, and believe in what you're doing, and have confidence, and you will be fine.
Well, I hope we didn't scare Mike and Joseph with that. But maybe this underscores exactly why there's only 265 of you guys worldwide. And we really appreciate your time today. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. If you'd like more information on the VCDX Certified Professionals and Candidates here at Rolta AdvizeX, please visit our website at www.advizex.com and download our VCDX Meet the Experts guide. Thank you, everyone.